Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. I am your host, Mark Silverman. Today, I have one of my coaching heroes, someone who's been in the business when I came in and, kind of the real deal and the standard that I held myself to. His name is Stephen McGhee. He started out in investment banking. I think he was an ecumenical minister at one point, but like everybody else, he had an epiphany in his life and changed direction. He's got a degree in spiritual psychology. He runs Stephen McGhee Leadership. He works with highly successful people who are already leaders and really high achievers and takes them to the next level. He's written several books, one called Get Real, A Vital Breakthrough on Your Life and Leadership. He also has a book and a film about his experience taking 7 men to go climb a mountain in South America, which is really cool. The documentary is way cool. And he's really committed to leadership and well-being, which we're going to explore in this conversation. Stephen, thank you for being on the show.
Hey, man, as I said earlier, it's my honor. I'm grateful to be here, buddy. Thank you.
This is awesome. So the reason you're on the show is because of that specific post that you wrote with you doing push-ups in the middle of a freezing river in Beaver Creek. And you said, 60 is the new 40. And you're not even 60 yet, right?
No, I'm not. I'm about 3 years shy of 60, but
we're both 57. That's awesome.
We're both 57, and I feel like, this is an ongoing habit of mine to prepare myself to be as vital as possible as I go into these next chapters of life.
So tell me, that's a pretty flippant thing to say. 60 is the new 40, but with you, nothing is flippant. Tell me what you were trying to convey to people.
Well, the first thing I want to convey to people is that I believe it with all of my heart. Like, it's not just some idea that I threw out there, and I've been, and then secondly, the science is there. We have the technology that we know we can regenerate cells, that we can reverse aging, that things like conscious breathing can eradicate the possibility of Alzheimer's disease. But I would also say that this isn't an easy endeavor, that this isn't something that people just do half-heartedly. This is a choice, and how I live my life and how I prepare myself for my 60s, 70s, 80s, and God knows way beyond 100 now is the total possibility. And I'm not just talking about taking up a chair. I'm talking about being vital and producing results and being a leader and living out a legacy. So, the science is there. The combination of science with spirituality is super important to me, but moreover, it requires someone being completely honest with themselves about where they are so that they can do what's required to, create forward.
So I'm sitting in the car and I'm listening to you. So all of a sudden I'm a little nervous. Where do you want me to be honest with myself?
In the same way as I've had to be. So for example, there was a time in my life where I was stressed about the work I was doing. I was stressed about my marriage, which is now a divorce. I was stressed about whether I was good enough, and I had really fulfilled upon my true potential in life. And the way I dealt with it, I'm not an alcoholic, but the way I dealt with it was having a couple glasses of wine or a couple beers to take the edge off. And the problem with that, Mark, was that I didn't get in touch with the deeper problem because of it. I just took enough of the edge off that I could be dishonest with myself and keep up the charade and keep up the facade. And I didn't really want to go that deep. I didn't want to look at myself in those ways. So that's just one example. I've got many, but that's one.
It's interesting because I think the whole craft beer phenomena that's going on now, and the fine wines and all that is just a really dressed up way of numbing ourselves so that society doesn't notice.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a Colorado man, so I grew up skiing. I grew up hiking and climbing in these mountains. I grew up doing, races up Imogene Pass and Pikes Peak, and the thing we would do, it was like hard earned. So whether we were training or finishing an event, the question always came up, where can we go get a beer? And, I'm not saying it's all bad, but when it became a pattern, when it became something that I was dependent on to avoid the truth of who I am and what I needed to do in my life, that then became a problem.
Sure. So one of the, in reading some of the things that you write about well-being, you say it needs to be a focused endeavor. There needs to be focus and a plan and actual effort into that.
Yeah, I think, the fallacy is that people can look out extrinsically, and I think leadership is an internal journey that offers an external reward. I just think a lot of leaders think it's all about what's going on out here. And so the tendency, the habit can become that I'm going to look out there and I'm going to copy what looks like was easy for the next guy. But I'll tell you, having been in thousands of conversations over 20 years with great leaders, it's not easy for any frickin' body.
Hmm.
It's just not. And if you're kidding yourself that you don't have what it takes, that's the first thing to look at. Like, that's just a way to get yourself off the hook. And that's a way to say, maybe I don't have what that takes to, be 40 at 60. But you do. You just haven't planned, or perhaps haven't made the choices that would lead you there or take you there. And that's a lonely journey, man. I mean, having a coach is a great idea, but you're ultimately, at the end of the day, when you put your head on your pillow, even if you're laying next to your beloved, your bride, it's still you. It's the relationship with you, and dealing with that is the key.
You just gave me a little bit of a light bulb moment. The first thing was that, Steve, our mutual friend, Steve Chandler, says, you don't admire someone's muscles or their money. You admire their commitment to get there. And that's always stood me up straight to, what I really admire is people's dedication to whatever goal I'm looking at. And then, but what you just said was that when you look at someone else who has accomplished something and you think, they must be different than I was, or it was easier for them, or they have something I don't have, that's a great cop out. You and I both know, when we talk to these leaders, it is as difficult for them to get up in the morning some days and to deal with the difficult conversations that they have, to go make the risky decisions that they have to make, to take the responsibilities that they have to do, that somehow people think that there's something different about that. Like, it feels different to them than it feels to us.
Yeah, I know that that can be a limiting belief. It's just, from my experience, it isn't the truth. We're all given a deck of cards. Granted, some of us have maybe more aces in the deck than others, but you still got to play your deck. And I think you make a really good point about the muscles and the money, because if you've ever watched the Special Olympics or seen a person that struggles to get to the end of a mile race in a wheelchair or crawling on the ground because they're so exhausted, we don't frickin' care whether they won or not. What we care about is that they had the guts and the soul and the spirit and the commitment and the integrity to finish the race. And we all have that. Nobody's exempt from that. That's the biggest rationalization ever. And when I say rationalization, I talk about rational lies a lot. Like, yeah, it makes sense and you can believe it if you want. But I think what you and I are committed to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we're saying, no, it could be you too. And it might be different for you than it is for me, but we all have the goods. We all have the wherewithal, if we choose it and we're willing to punch through the challenging limitation. And I think sometimes that's why it's hard. It requires punching through it. It requires getting so fucking pissed off about the reality of your current situation that you decide you're going to punch through it. Like, get up in the 12th round when there's 30 seconds left and see what you got. And sometimes over 40, that can become more pronounced, which is why I speak the way I do and talk to people the way I do, because ultimately I believe in people.
What do you mean that it's more pronounced after 40?
I think, for one thing, physicality earlier in life is just easier. It's easier to sleep. For men specifically, we start to lose testosterone as we get older. There's ways to keep it up, by the way, without exogenous methods. You can still keep your testosterone up by doing deadlifts and by doing squats. And a lot of people don't know that, but it's stuff we can do. So that's, just one example. NAD, cellular regeneration and reparation is something we lose as we get older. So these are just physical components. But the good news, as I mentioned earlier, if a person wants to, along with the hard work, like I just don't think this is about a pill. I think it's about getting help where you can and then committing yourself to the journey. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Where I thought you might be going, and my mind is going, is after 40. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about the conditioning and how our body just starts to remember things that have happened to us, and we start reliving those things over and over again because we're used to it. And I was thinking, after 40, some of the hopes and dreams that didn't come true start to weigh. You've had some hurts. You start to get a little more cautious. You may have more responsibilities, and you're a little scared of taking risks and going out of your comfort zone. And after 40, it seems to take take a lot more energy to make those changes, make those moves. For me, like for exercise, I used to be able to throw weights around, and it was, I'd go throw weights around, and then I could keep my weight down, and I could look good in a suit. Right now at 57, I throw weights around, my shoulder goes out. I run, my Achilles tendon gives out. Like I can't just brute force it. I have to finesse it a little bit in order to keep it going. And it takes a lot more mental fortitude to keep at it and not just let it go.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to, reiterate what you said so beautifully, which is that I think you're right. I think after 40, there's more disappointment. There's more, hey, I thought my life would look like this at this point. And it would be easy to go south physically, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. It would be easier for most people to go south. And we see this all the time. We see people after a certain age in life, focusing on, you'll hear it in language like on a Monday, they'll say, I'm looking forward to Friday. Or, I've known people when I've gone in and done corporate culture change work, they're, 3 years out, they're talking about retirement as if the next 3 years are going to be terrible. I can't imagine living that way. I can't imagine not waking up in the morning to some form of inspiration. Doesn't mean leave your job. Doesn't mean, stop taking care of your family. It doesn't mean any of that. It means it's inside of you, and it's your job to uncover it, like peeling back the layers of the heart, peeling back the layers of of your soul, and finding what's true for you, what's authentic for you. Sometimes for people, men and women over 40, we've stuffed our true selves for so long because of our work or job, or we're afraid to have the tough conversation with our spouse that we forget who we are. And maybe the worst illness of over 40 is that one, because now we don't even know ourselves when we look in the mirror. We know we're lying to ourselves every day, and it doesn't have to be that way. I want to be a voice of possibility that says, hey, you can look in the mirror and be not perfect, but you can be progressing toward the life you want well into your 70s and 80s, well into your 90s. And I think we're seeing more of that. I think we're seeing more and more people attracted to that and interested in that.
Well, people used to think you're going to retire at 60, 65, and then you hit 60, 65, and you're like, geez, I got like 30, 40 more years to go.
Yeah.
One, I'd like to be healthy for those and not be sitting in the nursing home, and because they're going to keep you alive. And two, I don't have the money to keep me going. So I got to work or do something to make myself useful and provide value in this world. So there is incentive to keep going, because 65 is just not the time to go find a rocking chair.
No, and I think the possibilities there are far-reaching. Some of the people I work with, where they've been mindful of the goal line, they have good resources, and so what they start to look at doing is they start to look at how they can use those resources to be of greater service. So they're not looking to retire necessarily, but they're saying, hey, I want to be running a community culture program for my town and my city to help kids, or whatever the passion would be. There's lots of opportunities. And for a person that still needs to work for the money, we know through technology, there's a lot of ways where people can do that, be making a good living with something that they love and that they believe in. But it does require an open mind and a willingness to see it and to get there and to take the action steps to create it.
And to learn what you need to learn technology, learn something
Yeah,
new,
whatever it is, but
which
not just shut down and go, oh, I got to find a way to coast now. Because I've not known that many happy people that coast.
I have cousins who are in their 70s and he's 84 and they own a company. And he says, if I retire, I'm going to go to Florida and I'll be dead within a year. I'm not retiring. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to watch them be vibrant in part of the world at that age. So you say you use the phrase crossing the goal line with the soul line.
Yeah.
And I'm really intrigued by that.
Yeah.
Oh, did I lose you?
You there?
Yeah.
There we go.
So I'm really intrigued by that, and I would love for you to expound on that because I think I know what it means, but I don't want to make it up.
Yeah, I bet you do. But I kind of want to have people imagine like a vertical line on the goal line. So it would go like this. If you can see me on your screen, I know if you're driving, you can't, but imagine vertical at the bottom of the sheet of paper, let's say, and then horizontal. So people come and they say to me, I'm interested in coaching. And I'll say, what would you want to coach for? It's a longer conversation, I'm sure but it's like, they'll say, well, I want to increase on the goal line. So they want to be more successful in their business, more successful in sales, more successful in terms of how fast they take their company public or whatever it is. And that's the goal line. All great, right? Fabulous. Oftentimes it has to do with money, but not always. But oftentimes their soul line evolution is this high. So now what you have is you have a breadth and a depth that isn't, it's not very deep, and it's not very, there's not a lot of a container for life and fulfillment there.
So what you're saying is they've really put all their eggs in the goal line basket.
Yeah.
And the soul line is very low. It's minimal. So it's really not giving depth to what they've accomplished.
That's right. Asking the tough questions about self, asking the tough questions about what you believe spiritually, asking the tough questions about what would create greater intimacy with your wife or your husband. But on the soul line, you start to go up the soul line, look what happens. You now have a huge container of fulfillment and success on the goal line. So you have both soul line and goal line experience, which is very powerful. And then what I find is those are the people that are lit up. Those are the people that have an overflow. Those are the people that wake up on a weekend and they're sharing more of themselves with their community or with their family because they're not just fried and they're not just looking forward to the next beer on the couch. So soul line and goal line it's a longer conversation than we have time for today, but there's an connectedness and an integration of those in a person's life. And it just adds a tremendous amount of value.
If people have been
from my experience.
If people have been with me for even more than a few episodes, they'll know what you're talking about because my people actually think about that. And you really illustrated it beautifully of the importance and the vibrancy of taking care of those two directions. I love that.
Yeah.
So one of the things, like I'm chomping at the bit here as we're talking. One of the things I'm really passionate about, and I have not figured out a way to do it, is to get people to understand that leadership, that being successful in business, in any endeavor, your well-being, both your physical health and your emotional and spiritual health, just like you were talking about with the soul line, is imperative. Right. So I sit here and I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how do I get people to get that it's strategically and profitably important to carve time out of your day for those other things that you talk about.
Oh man, you're singing my song, buddy. I mean, the very first principle that I work with most people on is very simple, and it's take care of yourself first so that you can take care of other people. And it is the single most challenging thing for most successful people. Like somehow we can keep running on empty for the longest time and it's not going to catch up with us. Problem is, it does.
It does. It always does.
It has caught up with me in my life. I won't go into the details now, but big time. Like 8 days in intensive care caught up with me. So that's part of why I feel so much conviction and passion about this topic today, Mark. But it's like, wow, what are people going to do about that? That's the deeper, the deeper question I think we're all asking.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, society, food, we watch a lot of baseball in my home,
Yeah,
and if you watch the commercials are both for food and for cars. But when you see the commercials for food, it's not food. It's actually not food, right?
yeah.
It's like I sit there and I like that's not food. That's just not food. And we spend a lot of time, people roll their eyes at those of us who want to eat organic food or want to eat natural food. Like people roll their eyes. Why don't you just eat what you eat? And I don't know why that's a heretic point of view, to want to eat healthy and take care of yourself and put those things first. But anybody I'm able to convince with my own advertising that that's something that's important, they see the exponential results.
Well, and I think you're really speaking to leadership that's maybe out of the office. Like, to me, leadership's holistic. I'm sure you feel the same way, and your listeners probably do too. Leadership doesn't start at work and end at work. In fact, those are managers, if you ask me. So I'm interested in leaders that look at everything through the lens of what's the greater good, what's the highest growth path, how can I advance at the highest level for myself and my people. Notice what I said, for myself and my people. That's heretic too. That's like, you're selfish. You are not selfish. You are intelligent when you take care of yourself first, because people depend on you. So when a person goes in and finds out they have pre-diabetes, or they have diabetes, or some other medical condition which is only on the upswing in this country. So the idea that we're eating SAD, the sick and dead diet, sad diet of something like that, but you get the idea.
Right?
We all are bought into it because we've been taught, we've been brainwashed to believe it's food. And I am so with you. It is not food. There's food and there's not food. If you're eating something out of a box, it's not food, more than likely.
If it's
Does it
yeah, I've
taste
heard
good?
if it's advertised, it's not food.
It could be that too. I mean, I think we have to take a big key to this is taking responsibility for what you put in your body. And I've known people, they really get passionate about that. Listen, nobody's opening your mouth and stuffing it in there. But I mean, you start talking about a whole chemical change in your brain when you're eating that stuff, because it does send signals to your brain that you're not nourished and you're still hungry. And that's why we eat a bag of what my favorite junk food, which is potato chips. I mean, they've literally scientifically proven how that can inject the right amount of crunch and the right amount of sugar, so that you don't just eat one, right? You ever heard that ad? That's
Oh,
an
no.
old ad, but you can't eat just one.
So yeah, actually, so this actually ties everything together for me, because
Okay.
on one hand, you and I are talking some really wise stuff. On the other hand, we sound like some cranky old New Agers, talking about this stuff. But the truth is, eating like crap will affect your mindset. It will affect your mood, will affect your energy level, which affects the way you go to work, affects how you look at yourself. And then you go home and you eat that crap again, and then you don't feel like exercising, and it's a spiral. And age and gravity is enough of a spiral to kind of get out of that orbit, that if we can break some of that cycle, like we'll break, like just stop drinking soda. Just stop drinking soda. You have 3 Cokes a day, just stop that. Nothing else, right? And if you can just change the spiral to a different direction, if you eat a little bit healthier, you'll feel a little bit better, which means you may go for a walk, which means you may feel better at work, you may do a little bit better job. And like that whole thing could just change the trajectory, even in your 40s and 50s.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what I want to drop into is, I am so ordinary. I am just an ordinary guy doing the best I can to live the greatest life possible. And it's work every day. And I would just say it's worth it. But to your point, man, it's like, make those choices, simple choices, small things done consistently make big impact in our lives. And I just think it's something for all of us to look at. Everybody gets to choose, but at least then we're choosing instead of feeling like it's happening to us, which is just not the case. Most of us get to choose what we eat. I know that's not true for everyone on the planet, and God bless them. Maybe we can all do something to help those people get the proper food as well. But my point is, it starts with us. It starts with you. It starts with you making those choices and decisions now, regardless of how people look at you. Regardless of what people say to you when you reach for the carrot and hummus versus the cheesy nacho that's full of grease, which, hey, I love the taste, but I also know the impact. And the impact just isn't worth it. It starts on the physical level. It transcends to the emotional. A clear mind is everything in business and life and leadership. And then spiritually, we can mature, whatever you believe in that way. There's an opportunity through discipline to get liberated and get free. So I think that's in essence what we're talking about here. And I mean, are we? Is that?
We're totally talking
Yeah,
about this stuff. We're totally, and and guys like you and I are here to help people along the journey when it's just too tough to row it alone, right?
yeah,
Very
absolutely.
so cool. So thank you for sharing all this. I really appreciate you doing that. What's next for you? What are you excited about that you're building or creating?
Well, I think, as I've been kind of quiet for the last few years because I didn't want to just put something out there that was warmed up, from my past, past programs or past work I've done. And I've spent the last couple of years looking deep inside of myself at what's next. And what I've come up with is a launch of a program called L3, which is life, longevity, and leadership. And I see that as exponential, the interconnected nature of that. I'm launching that program in October of 2019. It's a 9-month program. And what I'm telling people is, listen, is the money, the time, and the commitment of 9 months worth the next 30, 40, 50 years of your life? I think so. But everyone gets to choose that too. But that's what's next. I'm super excited about bringing together a great team. I've got a good start on that. And we're going to create in business because we're going to get the foundation of life and longevity in there too. So people north of 40 are the ones that are most interested in that. Although I've had some interesting calls with some people in their 30s too.
Yeah, people. I think people are waking up a little bit earlier. I think
Yeah,
the
I do
change in the
too.
economy. I think the change in the economy and some of the stressors that are on people are also waking people up. So there's always an unintended consequence, and I think the unintended consequence is people waking up and getting creative about their own endeavors.
Yeah, I do too. It's great news.
It's very cool. So thank you so much. Thank you for coming to us from beautiful Beaver Creek, Colorado. I spent a few days there and I just love it. Amazing place. I will put the links to everything that we talked about on the show notes so that people can find you. They can find your program. They can find the movie, the books, everything, and then they can enjoy as much of you as I have. Stephen, thank you for being on the show.
Well, it's my pleasure. And before we sign off, I want to thank you. I want to thank you because what you're doing matters, and the people you're bringing together with the different guests, and of course your own thoughts on these topics, incredibly valuable. You're the real deal to me, man, and I'm grateful to know you. I'm glad you're doing the work that you're doing. There's a lot of it to be done, and I just love the collaboration that you put out in the world. So thank you for having me, and thank you for being you and doing the work that you're doing. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. All right. So with that, to everybody else in the car and or at home listening, thank you for your time and attention. I never take it for granted. I am so grateful that I get to do this. I love you and have a great rest of the day.